The White House just out with a new blistering response for Democrats after they released emails written by Jeffrey Epstein that reference President Trump. Here's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
It is not a coincidence that the Democrats leaked these emails to the fake news this morning ahead of Republicans reopening the government.
Why are White House officials then meeting with Representative Boebert in an effort to try and get her to not sign this petition calling for the release of the files?
Doesn't it show transparency that members of the Trump administration are willing to brief members of Congress whenever they please? Doesn't that show our level of transparency?
In one email from 2011, Epstein writes, quote, "The dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Redacted victim spent hours at my house with him." House Oversight Republicans earlier questioned why Democrats redacted the name, saying, quote, "It's because this victim, Virginia Giuffre, publicly said that she never witnessed wrongdoing."
The Oval Office turned into an absolute war zone yesterday. And let me tell you, what went down between Trump and ABC News is something we haven't seen in modern presidential history. Picture this: the most powerful office in America, cameras rolling live, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman sitting right there, and suddenly Trump just completely loses it on national television. We're talking about a full-blown presidential meltdown that has everyone asking, what is Trump so desperate to hide that he'd threaten to shut down one of America's biggest news networks? But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Private correspondence over the span of about 15 years time. They did not deny that Donald Trump spent time with Virginia Giuffre at Jeffrey Epstein's house. That is obviously what Jeffrey Epstein was insinuating in that email to Ghislaine Maxwell from April 2011. But obviously they were critical, highly critical of Democrats on the House Oversight Committee for releasing these emails that they got as a result of that bipartisan subpoena. But it was a pretty short briefing, Brianna. Obviously it was about 1:25 or so when the press secretary came out with the FBI director, Kash Patel, who gave an opening statement that was unrelated. It had to do with fentanyl.
Here's what nobody's talking about. This wasn't just another Trump versus media moment. This was the President of the United States in front of a foreign leader screaming at a female reporter and demanding that an entire news network lose its broadcast license. And why? Because ABC's Mary Bruce dared to ask about two topics that clearly hit way too close to home: Jeffrey Epstein and Saudi business deals. The timing here is absolutely crucial, folks. We've got Congress pushing for more Epstein files to be released. We've got new revelations coming out every week about Trump's connections to various controversial figures. And now we've got the president literally threatening to use government power to silence journalists who ask uncomfortable questions. Think about what we're witnessing here for a second. A sitting president in his second term, no less, is so rattled by basic journalistic questions that he's willing to torch whatever's left of press freedom in America. And he's doing it while hosting the Saudi Crown Prince, you know, the guy who's been linked to the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The optics alone are absolutely devastating. But Trump either doesn't care or he's so panicked about what might come out that he's willing to burn everything down to stop it. Mary Bruce, ABC's chief White House correspondent, was just doing her job. She asked legitimate questions that millions of Americans want answers to. Questions about why certain Epstein files haven't been released yet. Questions about Trump family business dealings with Saudi Arabia. These aren't gotcha questions. These are fundamental accountability questions that any president should be prepared to answer. But instead of answering them, Trump went nuclear. He called her terrible, he called her insubordinate, and then he escalated to threatening her entire network's ability to broadcast. Let's be real clear about what happened in that room. When Bruce pressed Trump about the delayed release of Epstein files, something inside him snapped. He didn't just deflect or give a non-answer like politicians usually do. He launched into a tirade calling ABC, quote, one of the perpetrators of a Democrat hoax. Now stop and think about that for a second. Why would asking about Epstein files trigger such an extreme response? What's in those files that has Trump so terrified that he'd risk looking completely unhinged on live television rather than just give a simple answer? The Saudi angle makes this even more explosive. Here's Trump sitting next to MBS, the Saudi Crown Prince, and when Bruce asks about Trump family business deals with the Saudis, Trump doesn't deny anything. He doesn't say there are no deals. He doesn't claim everything is above board. Instead, he attacks the reporter for daring to ask the question. That tells you everything you need to know about where this story's headed. When someone reacts that violently to a simple question, it's usually because they know the answer would be devastating if it came out. Now let's really dig into what went down in that Oval Office, because the details are even more shocking than the headlines suggest. Trump didn't just criticize Mary Bruce. He went on a sustained attack that lasted several minutes and got progressively more unhinged as it went on. At one point, he literally said, and I'm quoting directly here, "It's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you're a terrible reporter. Just imagine being a professional journalist, doing your job, asking questions that the American people deserve answers to, and having the President of the United States publicly humiliate you like that in front of the entire world." But Trump wasn't done there, not even close. He then pivoted to attacking ABC News as a whole, declaring that the network should have its license taken away. His exact words were, "I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and so wrong." Then he added this bizarre claim about how ABC was supposedly 97% negative toward him, but he won the election in a landslide, so therefore their news isn't credible. The logic there is completely twisted, but that's beside the point. What matters is that we have a sitting president explicitly calling for government censorship of the press because he doesn't like their coverage. This is where it gets really concerning from a constitutional perspective. Trump wasn't just venting or throwing a tantrum. He was making specific threats about using federal regulatory power through the FCC to punish a news organization. During the same event, he started posting on Truth Social about FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, demanding tighter scrutiny of what he calls fake news licenses. This isn't just talk anymore. Trump is actively trying to weaponize government agencies against the free press. And remember, this is happening in his second term when he's supposedly more experienced and measured than he was the first time around. The Epstein connection here cannot be ignored, and it's clearly what triggered Trump's most extreme reactions. When Bruce brought up the delayed release of Epstein files, Trump's response was absolutely bizarre. Instead of giving a straightforward answer about timing or legal procedures or national security concerns, any of which might be legitimate reasons for delays, he started ranting about Democrat hoaxes and fake news conspiracies. Why would a simple question about document releases cause such a massive overreaction unless there's something in those documents that Trump desperately doesn't want the public to see? We need to talk about the pattern here too, because this isn't an isolated incident. Just days before this confrontation with Mary Bruce, Trump had called another female reporter Piggy during a press conference. He'd also blasted Bloomberg's Catherine Lucy, calling her the worst. There's a clear escalation in his anti-media rhetoric, and it seems to be getting more personal and more vicious, especially toward female journalists. The timing of this escalation perfectly coincides with new Epstein revelations hitting the news cycle, which raises obvious questions about what Trump is trying to distract from or shut down. The Saudi element adds another layer of complexity to this whole situation. Mohammed bin Salman was literally sitting right there when Trump had his meltdown. This is the same Saudi crown prince who has his own controversial history with the press, including the brutal murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. For Trump to attack press freedom while hosting MBS sends a chilling message about where his administration's priorities lie. It's almost like Trump was performing for MBS, showing him that America too can silence journalists who ask uncomfortable questions. What's really telling is how Trump's allies have responded to this incident. Instead of trying to walk it back or smooth things over, many of them have doubled down. They're actively pushing for FCC investigations of mainstream media outlets. They're claiming that the press is trying to destroy Trump's presidency. Some are even suggesting that broadcast licenses should be reviewed and potentially revoked for networks that aren't sufficiently supportive of the administration. This isn't just Trump having a bad day, and this is a coordinated assault on press freedom that goes all the way through his administration and his political movement. The financial connections between the Trump family and Saudi Arabia have been documented for years, but they've never been fully explored or explained. We know that Trump properties have received millions from Saudi sources. We know that Jared Kushner's investment firm received a $2 billion investment from the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund after Trump left office the first time. These are massive financial entanglements that raise serious questions about conflicts of interest and foreign influence. But when a reporter tries to ask about them, Trump doesn't provide transparency. He attacks the reporter for daring to bring it up. There's also the broader context of Trump's relationship with the media to consider. Throughout his political career, he's branded journalists as enemies of the people. He's called for changes to libel laws to make it easier to sue media organizations. He's praised authoritarian leaders who jail or kill journalists. This latest incident isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of a long-term campaign to delegitimize and potentially destroy independent journalism in America. When Trump threatens ABC's license, he's not just lashing out in anger. He's following through on years of rhetoric about punishing media organizations that don't toe his line. So where does this leave us? We've got a president who's apparently so panicked about Epstein questions and Saudi business dealings that he's willing to threaten the fundamental principle of press freedom in America. We've got an administration that's actively exploring ways to use regulatory power to silence critical media coverage. And we've got a political movement that's increasingly comfortable with authoritarian tactics when it comes to controlling information. This isn't normal, folks. This isn't how democracy is supposed to work. This is what happens when someone with something to hide gets enough power to try to silence anyone who might expose them. The response from the journalism community has been swift and unified. Press freedom organizations are sounding the alarm about Trump's threats. Media lawyers are pointing out that the FCC doesn't actually have the power to revoke licenses the way Trump seems to think it does. But that almost misses the point. Even if Trump can't literally shut down ABC tomorrow, the threat itself has a chilling effect. How many reporters will think twice before asking tough questions if they know it might result in their network being targeted by the federal government? Think about what this means for the next few years of Trump's presidency. If he's this reactive and vindictive now, what happens when more Epstein files come out? What happens when investigative journalists dig deeper into Saudi connections? What happens when the next scandal breaks? Are we going to see Trump using every tool at his disposal, the Justice Department, the FCC, the IRS, whoever, to go after journalists and news organizations that report things he doesn't like? Because that's exactly where this trajectory leads, and we've seen it happen in other countries that have slid toward authoritarianism. The Epstein angle of this story deserves special attention because it's clearly what set Trump off the most. The Jeffrey Epstein case remains one of the most disturbing and far-reaching scandals in recent American history. We're talking about a massive sex trafficking operation that allegedly involved some of the most powerful people in the world. Trump's name has come up repeatedly in connection with Epstein over the years. They were photographed together multiple times. Epstein recruited girls from Mar-a-Lago. Flight logs show connections between them. And now, when asked about releasing files that might shed light on all of this, Trump doesn't want transparency. He wants to shoot the messenger. What could possibly be in those Epstein files that has Trump so worried? We can only speculate, but his reaction suggests it's something significant. Maybe it's evidence of closer ties than he's admitted. Maybe it's information about other powerful people in Trump's orbit. Maybe it's something we haven't even considered yet. But whatever it is, Trump's behavior suggests he thinks it would be damaging enough that he's willing to risk looking like a tyrant rather than let it come out. That should concern every American, regardless of political affiliation. The Saudi business dealings are equally troubling. We're not talking about normal international business relationships here. We're talking about massive financial flows from a foreign government to the family of a sitting president. We're talking about decisions that affect national security and foreign policy being made by people who have received millions or billions from the Saudi government. When journalists try to investigate these connections, they're not being partisan or unfair. They're doing exactly what the press is supposed to do in a democracy. They're trying to hold power accountable. But accountability is exactly what Trump seems determined to avoid. His attack on Mary Bruce wasn't really about her or even about ABC. It was about sending a message to every journalist in America. Don't ask questions I don't want to answer, or I'll come after you and your organization. It's the kind of thing we used to criticize other countries for doing. Remember when we used to talk about press freedom as a fundamental American value? Remember when we used to condemn leaders who threatened journalists? Now we've got a president doing exactly that, and a significant portion of the country seems to be fine with it. The really scary part is that this is probably just the beginning. Trump has been pretty clear that he sees his second term as a chance for revenge against his perceived enemies. The media is at the top of that enemies list. He's got allies in Congress who are eager to help him go after news organizations. He's got a Supreme Court that might be sympathetic to expanding executive power. He's got a base that's been conditioned to see journalists as the enemy. All the pieces are in place for a serious assault on press freedom. And this incident with ABC might just be the opening salvo. We also can't ignore the gendered aspect of Trump's attacks on journalists. Mary Bruce, Catherine Lucy, and the reporter he called Piggy are all women. Trump has a long history of particularly vicious attacks on female journalists, often using language that's personally demeaning in ways he doesn't typically use with male reporters. This isn't just about press freedom, it's also about creating a hostile environment for women in journalism. When the president publicly humiliates female reporters for doing their jobs, it sends a message that women who ask tough questions will face consequences that their male colleagues might not. The international implications of this incident are significant too. America has long positioned itself as a defender of press freedom around the world. We've criticized other countries for censoring journalists or threatening news organizations, but how can we maintain that moral authority when our own president is doing exactly what we condemn others for doing? Authoritarian leaders around the world are watching this and taking notes. They're seeing that even in America, leaders can attack the press with relative impunity. As we wrap this up, I want you to really think about what we're witnessing here. This isn't just another Trump controversy that we can laugh off or ignore. This is a fundamental attack on one of the pillars of democracy. A free press isn't just nice to have, it's essential for holding powerful people accountable. When the president threatens to shut down news organizations for asking uncomfortable questions, he's not just attacking those specific journalists or networks. He's attacking the very idea that the people have a right to know what their government is doing. The questions that Mary Bruce asked, say, about Epstein files and Saudi business dealings, are questions that deserve answers. The American people have a right to know if their president has compromising connections to a sex trafficker. They have a right to know if foreign governments are influencing American policy through financial relationships with the president's family. These aren't partisan talking points. These are fundamental issues of national security and governmental integrity. But instead of providing answers or even reasonable deflections, Trump chose to attack the messenger in the most aggressive way possible. This story is far from over. The Epstein files are still out there, waiting to be released. The Saudi financial connections are still being investigated by journalists who won't be intimidated by Trump's threats. And every day, reporters like Mary Bruce are going to keep showing up and asking the tough questions, even if it means facing public humiliation and professional threats. Because that's what journalism is about, speaking truth to power, even when power tries to silence you. The question now is, what happens next? Will Trump follow through on his threats to go after ABC's license? Will other news organizations back down to avoid becoming targets? Will Congress do anything to protect press freedom, or will they enable Trump's authoritarian impulses? Will the American people stand up for the free press, or will they cheer as Trump tears it down? These aren't hypothetical questions anymore. They're urgent challenges that will determine what kind of country we're going to be. One thing is certain, though. This incident has revealed something important about Trump's state of mind. He's scared. He's defensive. He's lashing out at anyone who might expose whatever it is he's trying to hide. And when someone with that much power is that desperate, anything can happen. We need to stay vigilant. We need to support journalists who are doing their jobs despite the threats. And we need to demand answers to the questions that Trump is so desperate to avoid. Because in a democracy, no one, not even the president, is above accountability.